In this lesson, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at some of the modeling tools available for modeling inside of Maya. Of course, you'll take your models out and over into Unreal Ed and use them as static meshes. First thing I'd like to point out before we start getting real serious about this lesson is that I am using the commercial version of Maya. I am not using the PLE, which comes along with Unreal Tournament 2003, though you guys will find that you'll be able to install the PLE and follow along with absolutely no problem. I have decided to go with the commercial version for this lesson for the simple fact that the watermarks would get in the way while I am trying to demonstrate things inside our viewport area, and we just don't want that to happen. Now, before starting, let's go ahead and take just a second and introduce Mr. Zach Parrish. Hello, Zach.
Hey, how's it going?
Going pretty good. Zach works for 3DBuzz and helps all the time with various VTMs, and will be joining us for this particular lesson. So with that, Zach, let's go ahead and spend just a second, remind them about the importance of using grid snaps.
Absolutely.
We talked about in the workflow section using grid snaps is very important inside of Maya. I did take the time to come up to display, down to grid, and open up options and show you guys to make sure that you properly set your length width, grid lines, every how many units, and your subdivisions between major grid lines. Make sure to do that so that as you model your things inside of Maya and then bring them over into Unreal Ed, they will snap properly to the grid. So when you have units that are supposed to string together, an example, let's say a catwalk or wires or something like that, they will snap together without any problem. You won't have to go in there and disable snaps, which is a bad thing. I always just recommend people do not do that. So make sure to work with snaps. Now, I will not be using snaps in this lesson because this lesson is more about here are some tools that are very cool that you can use for generating static meshes relatively quickly inside of Maya. And then when you guys start doing it, make sure you use snapping. But before we move away from the whole snapping thing, I do want to take just a second and talk about some of the snapping types that's available inside of Maya. We'll talk a little bit more about the grid snap, and then we'll talk about curve and point snap as well, just so you guys have seen some things that can be quite handy to use while modeling. Isn't that right, Zach?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start out by making a simple sphere by clicking on the sphere icon from the shelf. There we go. And I'll come over here and select my move tool. Now, before I move on from this guy, let me go ahead and mention that I am now going to start using my hotkeys to switch back and forth between my different transform tools. W, as mentioned before in the crash course section, allows me to move. E to rotate. R will allow us to come in here and scale our objects. I'll go ahead and hit W. That just keeps me from having to go over here now. All right, so we've seen before that we can enable grid snapping from up here. Simply click on it. You can now see that we have got a little circle in our center square area. The center square is no longer there. And if I was to click in the center and drag along, you can see that it is indeed snapping to intersecting grid lines. Very good. Of course, you will not find me going up here and clicking this too often for the simple fact there is a way to toggle grid snap on momentarily, and we can do this with the hotkey on our keyboard, X. So as I click X on the keyboard, I want you to watch this icon up here. So here's X. Notice how it has toggled on. I let go of X. It has toggled off. So it's a very convenient way to come in here, click, and drag, and you see we're now snapping. And then I can let go, and I drag, and now I'm loosely dragging it around. Okay? Let's go ahead and undo a couple of times to reset back to 0, 0, 0. All right, now, you saw that I simply clicked and drug while holding X down. I could snap to these intersecting grid lines and then just simply drag it to where I want to go. But let's say I knew that I wanted to go to a specific location right off the bat. And if I hit X and put my mouse over that location and hit my left mouse button, what's going to happen is I'm going to start doing a marquee selection, and I'll end up deselecting my object. But it would be quite interesting if I was able to do something along those lines. Let's say I wanted this guy, for whatever reason, to go out here to the end of my grid. I could simply hold X, move my mouse out here to the end point of the grid, middle click, and then while holding the middle mouse button down, just simply gesture, and you'll see that I have snapped out to the end of the grid there.
Very cool.
So this is very handy. So again, X for grid snapping, select the location where I want it to go, middle mouse button down, gesture, and there it goes. So we'll undo a couple of times to move it back. Now, another thing I want to point out before we move on, and this works with all different types of snaps. By the way, so does the middle click thing. If I wanted to snap this guy in a particular axis, let's say I wanted to go in X and I wanted to snap him somewhere along this line right here, I could come in here. It doesn't matter where I go. As long as the X axis handle has been highlighted yellow, as you see there, I can simply middle click, and as I middle click and drag, you can see that he's snapping. Now, of course, it all depends on the angle that you're looking at it and all that good stuff, if he's going to snap the way you think. So in other words, if he snaps one unit too far, one unit back, rotate your view a little bit, because it may just be the way that your view has been angled and the information is being interpreted. But this is very handy when you need to snap in a particular direction, in other words, one axis only, and just simply just middle clicking and dragging as you see here. Okay?
Very nice.
So we'll undo that a couple of times. A couple more snaps I want to go ahead and point out is we do have the ability to use the curve snap. So if we wanted to take an object and snap it along a curve, we could do that. And we will be talking about curves in this lesson here a little bit later on. And finally, the last thing that's very handy is the ability to come in and use point snaps. And point snaps are CVs, vertices, lattice points, joints. We've got a bunch of different things that make up point snaps, or what points are considered inside of Maya. So let's go ahead and turn that off and talk just for a second about the hotkeys. You already know that X will toggle on and off grid snaps, C will toggle on and off curve snap, and finally V will toggle on and off point snap. Is that pretty simple there?
Very simple.
Okay, we cover everything?
Absolutely.
All right, so with that, let's now go ahead and delete this guy out. And now let's go ahead and move into talking about just a basic object and the anatomy of an object so we can distinguish between objects and components. So I'm going to come in here and create an ultra-sophisticated object by simply coming up here to Create. And from inside of Create, we get a menu presented that allows us to create a bunch of different things, everything from NURBS primitives, polygon primitives, to lights, cameras, curves, etc. I'm going to come up here to polygon primitives because our primary focus for creating static meshes for Unreal will be through polygonal modeling. Of course, we can use NURBS primitives, and I will take the time at the end of this lesson to show you guys a few techniques inside of NURBS because NURBS are extremely powerful in Maya, and then I'll show you how we can take the resulting surface and then convert it over to a polygon object and then take that polygon object out from there. But to start it out, let's keep things simple. Great sophisticated object, polygon, cube.
Wow.
Is that not cool or what?
Now that is sophisticated.
All right, so now what I want to do is go ahead and hit 5 to come into a shaded mode here. And as just a quick reminder, as we talked about in the crash course section, an object is composed of several nodes. In this case right here, we have an input node feeding into the shape node. And finally, we end up with the transform node, which controls where the object is placed, rotated, and scaled in the scene. Now, the shape node is the node that contains the actual makeup of the object. In other words, it contains all of the vertices and the map as to the location of all of these vertices. That's contained in the shape node. But feeding the shape node is this input node, and I can click on the input node to expand its attributes. And these attributes right here represent kind of like blueprint settings, and we can modify these settings, and then the information is fed over into the shape node where those settings are then read and properly interpreted, and then you get your new shape. So if I wanted to come in here and make my width, let's say my width, let's go with like 3. Now we've just made it wider. Perhaps take my depth up to 3, and height, well, maybe I want to middle click and drag using the virtual slider to control it over here. And you get the idea. But this is kind of limiting. Another thing that's nice, though, is the ability to come into subdivisions for width, height, and depth and set these guys up. Let's just click, drag, and set them up to 2. And what this does is it gives us a lot more detail that we can come in there and use right away. In other words, we have more polygons, we have more edges, we have more vertices that we can work with for generating our model. And a lot of people like to work this way. Start out with a basic cube, go and add a little bit of detail, and then away they go. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to undo a couple of times, perhaps take my height up just a little bit. All right, simple enough. Now what I want to do is point out the fact that while working with various deformers and with the input node over here that we have by default, there's not too much we can do as far as modeling something precisely that we see in our mind. If you want to start modeling a character or a vehicle or a weapon, at some point you're just going to have to start manipulating the components. So let's go ahead and take a look at components. Right now we are in an object mode. In the crash course section, I did point out that up here on the status line we've got object mode and we've got component mode. So in object mode, all of these icons over to the right represent our pick masks that allow us to set up filters for what we can and cannot select in regards to objects. But by coming over here into component mode, you can see that this guy's just changed now, so that now I have an entirely different array of pick masks that can be used in regards to selections, and these pick masks represent various component types that are available.
Okay.
So right now, I've got points turned on, everything else turned off, and if I go in here, in fact, let's go ahead and hit 4 on the keyboard to switch over to a wireframe view, I have just selected a vertex. Now, if I marquee select, I have just selected 2 vertices, with vertices being the plural word for vertex.
Right.
And now, of course, if I come in here and start manipulating these, I start modeling. I'm now coming up with a shape that's completely different that I could not achieve a second ago with simply working with the input node that came by default with this object. Zach, does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Okay, so let's go ahead and undo that. Of course, I could come in here. I could select several of these guys if I wanted to, scale them in, again, still going on with making some sort of new shape. Now, before I start showing all of the different component types in regards to this, let's talk about the basic anatomy of a polygon inside of Maya. We've got the vertex. These are vertices, simple points that you can go in, you can grab multiple ones, start moving them around. Then we have edges. I'm going to come up here and turn points off, turn edges on. And edges, basically an edge is a line that connects two vertices together. It's as simple as that. So right there is a single edge selected. Of course, I can come into this edge and I can start scaling it. I can, it's E on the keyboard, I can rotate it if I want it to, whatever may be required to generate the model that I'm looking to model.
All right.
Okay, so that's edges. Be careful, though. If I come in here and select, let's say, two across from each other, and then I just want to scale these two in, do keep in mind that what you're going to get, so watch this, I'm going to scale them in. I'm going to get a uniform scale because in the end, it's not, while it is the edge that's getting scaled, you know, that edge is always going to be connected to the two vertices on each end of it. And so in this case right here, with this edge selected and this edge selected, we're causing all four of these vertices to be scaled in. So it's going to look like a uniform scale on four selected vertices.
Okay.
All right. So finally, the next thing that you're going to find to be extremely helpful and very powerful is going to be polygon faces. And these are polygon faces. You can see that it's the entire highlighted area between all of the edges that connect together. Okay, so basically when you're dealing with polygons, you're dealing with a big connect the dots game, if you want to look at it that way. And you've got all these dots that are all connected together with lines, those lines being edges, and then all of the surfaces or all of the areas between lines that are continuous, that connect all the way around and back to one another, cause a polygon face. And I can select these faces by going into the face component mode and then simply selecting on the light blue dot like such. And then, of course, I can scale it up, or whatever. Does that make sense?
Very nice.
Okay. So now what I want to do is go ahead, and now that I've shown you object and I've shown you component, let's go ahead and talk for just a second about the menu sets. Now, of course, we've got multiple menu sets available. We talked about this in the crash course lesson. But if you switch over to the modeling menu set, you're going to find on your menu at the top, between window and help at the end, ignore scripts. This is something special that I've loaded for other things. But you're going to find between window and help a series of menu options that are all related to modeling. And they are broke down into categories. Edit curves, surfaces, and edit NURBS all represent dealing with NURBS. Then we've got polygons and edit polygons, and this is going to be dealing simply with polygon modeling. We've got subdivision surfaces, which is for sub-D modeling, and so that's basically how it's broke up. Now let's start focusing on polygons and edit polygons for now. Polygons are going to give us a series of tools and options available for working with the object itself, okay? And if we come over to edit polygons, generally what you find up underneath the edit polygons menu is going to be a series of tools and options available for while working with components. And since right now we're in a component mode, what I want to do is go ahead and spend a few minutes and start exploring some of the things available to us that we can use for adding more detail and getting more control over our model while modeling.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go ahead and start out by introducing them, Zach, to extrude faces.
Let's do it.
Extrude faces is extremely powerful, and it is a way of adding a lot of detail into an object quickly.
It's definitely one of my favorite tools for modeling.
Oh, absolutely, mine too. Right now you can see we've got the blue dots on all of the polygon faces. We do not have any on these edges right here. If I was to come up here to edit polygons and then come down to extrude face and click on it, now look what happened. First of all, my manipulator changed over to some sort of different type of manipulator that kind of looks like a hybrid between the move and the scale. And in a minute you'll see that it even includes the rotate as well. But this is an extrude face manipulator that we can use to manipulate the extrusion that we just did to the polygon face. Now, notice all these little dots all the way around? They weren't there a second ago. These dots, of course, represent selection handles, if you want to look at it that way, or selections for that particular polygon face. As you saw by clicking one of these, I'd select the face. But you don't see no face down here. It looks like just an edge. Of course, if I click and drag, that face does indeed exist. It's just that the extrusion that I just did a second ago had zero extrusion on it. In other words, it was dead flat on the other polygon face.
Right, so those new faces that were created actually had no area.
That's right. Now, all the faces did indeed exist, and this is where a lot of beginners learning to model inside of Maya, and especially polygonal modeling, working with extrusions like this, get themselves in troubles because they will go in there and they'll start extruding things and not realize they did it, and then later on they'll go to turn around and smooth it or whatever, and suddenly they'll find that they've got polygons stacked on top of polygons, and then they'll get a resulting model that's not what they're expecting to see. Okay, so very, very cool. So now we've added additional detail. Now let me show you a quick way that we can go back in and add another poly extrude without having to go back up to the menu and select extrude faces again. It's very simple. All we need to do is hit G on the keyboard, which will repeat our last action, and you can see now that I can go in there and I've got another extrusion that was just done.
Very cool.
As I do these extrusions, they start piling up over here in my input section, and I do have the capability to simply go down through them, and as I go down through them, I can modify the old extrusion at that point. Okay?
All right.
So good stuff to know. Another handy thing to know is if you need the ability to do that, and let's say for some reason you've come over into an object mode at some point, and you're like, I need to get back into my extrusions to make some modifications, that you could come over here, and by selecting it, just make sure that your show manipulators on, because without it, you know, right now I just selected my move tool. It's just a general generic move tool for the object. But if I need to get my poly extrude manipulator back, just select the poly extrude you're interested in manipulating, come over here, click on the show manipulator tool, the hotkey is T, and now I can come in here, I can make modifications to that one. I can even make modifications to one further back in history.
Very nice.
All right. Now what I want to do is go ahead and switch us back over real quick into our mode where we can select polygon faces. I'm simply going to right-click on my object. I'm going to get a marking menu presented. I'm going to drag down to face, and it's just a quick way to switch back over while still leaving my state in an object state. All right, so now with that happening, let's go ahead and take a look at a few more things. Let's marquee select all of the polygons through here, like such. Now what I want to do is come up here again to, actually let's go to polygons first, come down to tool options, and I want to make sure that keep faces together is turned, let's go ahead and turn it off for starters. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Now watch this. With those 4 polygons selected, coming back up here to edit polygons, come back down to extrude face. Now watch what happens. Interesting, eh?
Oh, very cool.
So now I have just pulled out 4 separate sets, new sets of boxes, if you want to look at it that way.
Right.
A ton of new detail if you want to start counting all of the polygons involved in doing this. Now, this is very handy, but there's a distinction when you select multiple faces like this. You can do it. You can go about doing the extrusion 2 ways. You can rather keep the faces together and treat the whole thing as one connected unit, or you can have them broke up into different pieces like this. And that is where I came up here to polygons, down to tool options, and I went ahead and turned keep faces together off. So it didn't keep them together. In this case, you saw that it indeed broke them up. Now, let's go ahead and show you, if you are working with them turned off by default, you do have the capability of coming back in and turning that back on just a poly extrude face node level. So in this case, with this guy selected, which was the extrusion that brought all 4 of these out, I could simply scroll down through all of its attributes and find the keep faces together attribute and simply turn it on like such.
Very cool. So if you make an extrusion and you realize that you wanted to keep those faces together, instead of having to make another, like undo and make a new extrusion, you can just go back into history and change that.
You got it.
Very cool.
You got it. So let's go ahead and turn that on, just so that, or excuse me, let's turn that off, just to work with this next example I want to show you, which is when you extrude all of these polygon faces like this, let's say with all these extruded, now I wanted to bring them down. So I'm just going to click and move down. And that's
okay.
not exactly giving us what we were thinking we would get. And that's because, let's go ahead and hit Z to undo. That's because this manipulator works in local mode and a global world mode. Right now we're working in a local mode, and so all of these guys, that's why I was able to pull straight out in Z, and all of them moved out representing, basically based off of their normals, okay?
Right,
So it was their local mode.
They moved out and not all moving in the same direction.
You got it. If I wanted these guys to all move up, then what I would need to do is switch this over from a local into a global mode, back into world mode, if you will. And I can do this by, if you take a look at the manipulator, you'll find this little circle up here. If I simply click on this to turn the little circle off, okay, as you see there, it's no longer filled in solid. Now I am working in a global world mode, and now I can move them up on Y, and the whole thing's going to move up, or I can move it down, the whole thing's going to move down.
Very nice.
As expected. So let's go ahead and do a couple undos there. And actually, let's do a redo real quick. All right, so another thing to point out, let's go ahead and jump back out here so that I'm indeed working again in a local mode, is scale. Right now you can see with this special manipulator that I can scale it up in Y, X, or Z over here, but I don't have a box in the center to do a uniform scale. I can simply click on any of these scale boxes, and you'll notice I'll then get the box in the center. So if I wanted to scale it up, now let's hit G again, which did another extrusion. Perhaps I can move it out again, click up here, and bring this guy back down maybe something like that. We're building something bizarre here.
Oh, yeah.
And then perhaps do another G and extrude this down just a little bit, and then another G, and we'll push it back in for whatever reason. So there we've created some sort of model that you could use inside of Unreal as who knows what. All right, but the idea, though, the idea. It's all about the idea.
Right.
Okay, so you can see now the importance of working with this guy up here. Let's go ahead and come up here and select something here. Let's do another G, move it up a little bit, and perhaps scale this guy up another G. So you see how once you get the hang of this, it's very quick to come in here and start modeling. Now, one of the things that you may find handy is the ability to rotate from time to time as well. And let's go ahead and scale that down just a little bit, maybe like that, and push it down, get some sort of just a little bit of a bevel going on there. Now, if I wanted to rotate something with this, all I need to do is click on this outer blue-colored or cyan-colored ring, and this will give us something so that we can then come in here and rotate that extruded face as well.
Very nice.
So there's kind of a pretty thorough look at what we can do in regards to the use of that particular manipulator.
Right.
How to get back to it, how to get away from it. And this does bring us up to one final thing as far as working with these different tools is take a look at what's happening over here in our input section. We're starting to develop a lot of history. Now, this can be very convenient, of course, because I can go back through these guys at any point in time and find a location that perhaps I didn't like this scaling right here, and I want to bring it down. It's nice to be able to go back through history and do that.
And it's very cool that it is actually scaling everything that goes down the history hierarchy.
That's right. Everything then is based off of as if that is what had happened originally in time, which is
very cool.
Which is excellent. But we got to be careful here because, of course, what happens is we get to a point where our history starts to become so large that things begin to slow down.
Right. We start to bog down our machine with all that data.
Exactly. And this goes all the way back to when I talked about the input node originally, which, believe it or not, we still have the old input node all the way down here if we wanted to get back to that guy and make more changes for whatever reason. But deleting history becomes a very valuable thing when you're modeling something that ends up having a lot of different nodes that comprise its makeup. And deleting history is very easy. Let's go ahead and switch back over here into object mode, and I'll simply select my object. Now remember, all of this information right here finally gets processed and fed into the shape node, and the shape node's the guy that's responsible for holding the final location of all the vertices that make up this object.
Okay.
So to delete history, what we'll do is we'll dump all of these input nodes, and we'll take that information basically and just what's the word I'm wanting to look for? Just permanently molded, if you will, in. So in other words, the shape node won't have to be looking at receiving information from anybody else. We're just saying, look, take a blueprint of this. This is exactly how these guys need to be laid out, period. Get rid of everybody else.
Right.
All right, so we're just committing it to memory for him permanently. He's not relying off anybody else. And deleting history is just a matter of selecting an object, coming up to edit, and then simply coming down to delete by type. Well, we're going to delete history. Click, and now all we're left with is our object and our transform node, the shape node. Inputs are gone.
So all those extrusions are gone. We can now no longer go back into history, change those extrusions.
You got it.
Okay.
At this point, if you wanted to go in there and start doing something, I can simply right-click on it and to do more modifications. But I have to go in here and grab vertices like such. I hit W for my move tool, and I have to work with this at this level now. And then I can still, of course, do new extrusions. That's not a problem. It's just the whole idea of using the extrusions that we had originally are no longer there.
Right. So deleting history is a good thing to do when you're pretty satisfied with how your model's looking.
Absolutely. All right, so with this, let's go ahead and do a quick new scene. And no, we don't want to save anything. I'll come back up here and create another wonderful polygon cube like such. I know, isn't he just great? And I guess we could have done this on the other one, but we'll just keep this nice and simple. Come back down here to delete by type. Let's get rid of history just to go ahead and make things nice and simple. And what I want to do next is introduce you guys to the split polygon tool, because the split polygon tool is fantastic. It gives you the capability of going in and specifically telling the object where you want to add additional detail. In other words, where do we want to add extra edges at.
Okay.
And we can go about doing this by selecting the object, coming up here to edit polygons, and coming down to the split polygon tool. And now with this, you can see that, let's go ahead and just pick a location here. I can click and I can drag, and when I hit the center point, right there, tink, it kind of snaps, and then I can drag off of that. So if I want it to snap center to center, I can just snap to center. Click over here. Now we have an edge. Snap to center. Dink, there it goes.
Boom.
And then I can simply hit enter on the keyboard, and all is good.
Nice.
And again, now this right here, watch this. This is a tool. So G, which is repeat last action, will not work to activate that tool again. To activate the last tool, you hit Y. So I hit Y on the keyboard. Look, there we go. I didn't even have to go up and dig through menus. Click, drag over here. He's going to stop right there. I cannot jump over vertices with this tool. Click down here at the bottom, snap, there you go. And I don't have to stop there. I can just simply come up underneath like such, rotate it around with the tool still active. Again, come down here and find where I want to snap it to. Not saying that I even have to snap. And come back up over here, snap to there, hit enter, and there you go. We've added additional detail all the way around.
Very nice.
Okay, of course, there's supporting vertices as well on each of these edges, but we all know that.
Right.
Have to have two vertices between an edge. What am I looking for?
Two vertices
at the end of an edge.
There you go.
Okay, so with that in place, now let's go ahead and point this out. You saw that we can do the snapping in there. If we come up here, if I don't say this, Zach will probably have a fit because he's a big user of this. If we come up here, come back down to Split Polygon Tool, we can open up the options. And there's some really cool settings in here. And as a matter of fact, just about every tool I'm going to show you has got settings, and we're not going to cover all of them, but this is one that if I don't cover, Zach will probably hit me on the back of the head with something, and we don't want that to happen.
I had thought about it, but I was actually going to be nice, and let's just kind of go on without it.
Oh, very nice. All right, so watch this. First of all, snapping magnets, right now we got one. If I want it two places, I can simply come in here and type 2, and what will happen now with this tool is if I click and snap, watch this, it's divided up so there's a snap point there. The second snap point somewhere over...
Just missed it.
Somewhere right over there. Wait, no. And if you have this problem right here, watch this. We can come in here, hit enter, and then we can just do a quick Control Z to get rid of that. Now I'll come back up here and reactivate my split polygon tool. And I will take my snapping tolerance up to something that will make it far more easy to see. Let's go with 50, and then click and drag, snap.
Oh, wow, look
snap.
at that.
There we go. So now I don't have to hunt around. So we can use the snapping tolerance over here, which is very handy for making it a much stronger magnetic pull to that point. All right, so we can go ahead and hit enter on this. Now, a couple of other tools up here that you may find, we'll just talk about them real quickly as well, and that is you see that we can basically continue dividing up how many snap points we have by doing this. I'll go ahead and set it back to 1. We can turn the snapping on and off if we'd like to, and the final thing that we can do is we can come up here and pre-subdivide, which is real nice. If I wanted 2 subdivisions in the new edge I'm creating, I could come up here and click drag out to, let's just again center point, click drag, and you can see that I've got 2 subdivisions already going into place. So you may find that to be very handy.
Very cool.
All right, so that's a good one to get out of the way. Now let's go ahead and come up over here. Let's close this guy out. Again, delete. Actually, you know what? Again, we got construction history over here coming about. Just be aware of that construction history. It gets people in trouble sometimes. Now let's go ahead and come up here again. We will just simply create another polygon cube. I'm just trying to keep this as simple as possible, Zach. That's what I'm wanting to do here.
I'm with you. I'm good to go.
Nice, simple cube. I'll go ahead and delete history only because it's such a habit. Delete by type, history. Right-click, switch over into faces. Grab one of these faces right here. We'll grab this guy. And you can delete polygon faces at any time. Tink. Oh, that was pretty simple.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so with that.
And for those of you who can't see his keyboard, he just hit the delete key.
Yeah, very, very good. Thank you very much. Phew, that was almost one missed. Okay, so now with this in place, sometimes you're going to find that you're going to have openings that you're going to want to go in there and fill back in. Of course, you could rather come up here and, let's see, go up to Edit Polygons, come down here and fill a hole, but you got to make sure that you have the edges selected that's going to do this. That's very important.
Absolutely.
So if we come in here and we select one of these edges, come back up here and come down and click on Fill Hole, it's going to fill.
Works great.
Yes, it does when you actually use the tool properly. I was jumping ahead, throwing something in that was not supposed to be in this lesson. What is supposed to be in this lesson is this next thing. Let's go ahead and, actually, you know what, let's just undo that. And we'll come back over here into an object mode like such, and I want to show you that we can come up here to polygons. Again, now we're dealing with an object, and if I want to, I can come down here and do an append to polygon, use that tool, and with it, look at this. See the dark, how this is extra bright, this right here, this is a border. And I can use the append polygon tool on borders, and I can simply come and click on a border, and I'm going to get these big, giant arrows telling me which way I need to click so that my surface normals are pointing out in the proper direction. So I just need to go this way, and this way, and then I can hit enter, and look what we have created, new polygon face.
Very cool.
Okay, so this can be very handy, especially if I was to, let's say, duplicate, and then take this object and move it over here for whatever reason, and we can just select both of these guys and switch over here into a polygon mode and grab, turn this guy off. Interesting. This is a good thing to point out. Watch this. Of course, you can right-click on any of these different pig masks up here, and for some reason, somewhere along the line while working, polygon faces got turned off and only NURBS patches got turned on. Of course, we're not dealing with NURBS patches right now, so I'm going to come down here and turn polygon faces on as well, and there's my little blue cubes.
And for those of you like me who are hotkey freaks, you can go into component mode with F8.
Oh, absolutely.
You can select vertices with F9, select edges with F10, and then you can select faces with F11.
Oh, you just go, Mr. Zach.
There you go.
Very nice. Okay, so now with these guys selected, let's just go ahead and hit delete, as you see there. And right now, these guys are serving as two different objects. What I'm going to do real quick is just come in here, select these guys, go up to polygons, and then come down and select combine so that they act as one object, and we'll talk a little bit more about that near the end of this lesson, or in a few minutes actually. Now if I come back up here to polygons and come down here to the append polygon tool, I can click if I wanted to, and then click across like this.
Oh, wow, check that out.
So that I can start bridging things together if I need to. Again, I can just Y key, and then over here I'm just following which way I need to go, and you get the idea. Okay? Simple enough, Zach?
Very simple.
Okay, so again, it's just another tool that you can use in your modeling process. Easy enough. Now, before we move on away from this area, I do want to point out that we can also extrude edges as we've extruded faces. So if I wanted to, again, we'll switch back into a component mode. We'll come over here and we'll grab edges. We'll grab this guy right here. I can come up here to edit polygons, and up under extrude face, you will find extrude edge. Simply do an extrusion on the edge, and I can click and drag that guy out.
Check that out.
This can be very, very handy. If I wanted to, let's go ahead and grab this guy over here. Again, I'll just hit G to bring this out. I'll switch over into a global mode, drag it out this way perhaps, grab this edge up here, hit W, move it down, maybe something like that. I just want this to be noticeable. The next thing I'm going to show you is how you can go in and merge vertices together.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and come back in here and turn our points back on and grab these 2 points right here. They're relatively far away from each other, which this will allow us to demonstrate our little threshold that we have. But merging vertices becomes a very important thing when doing polygonal modeling. This is where you have 2 vertices that are on top of each other, but they're supposed to be just one. You can simply select the 2 or more, and then from there, come up here to edit polygons, come down to merge vertices. We can go ahead and open the options box if we want to. You can see the distance, or you can look at it as the threshold from those coming from other applications. It's currently set at 0, so it's going to be looking for these guys to be dead on top of each other. We'll go ahead and do a merge vertex, and of course they did not merge together because they were the distance is
They were too
low.
far apart.
So what we can do if something like that happens is simply come up here and select it, the node in your over here in your channel box, poly merge vert, and then come down here to the distance, and you can start turning the distance up. Well, if I went with 0.1, well, what about 0.2 or 0.5? And you can see we get to a point where they do indeed merge together. And at this point, that's what we've got, just one vertex, as you can see.
And I know
here.
you've already gone over this, but as a rule, it's a lot easier sometimes if you'll snap one vertex to another before you merge them.
Absolutely. You know what, Zach? I love that idea so much. I will even take a second to demonstrate that based off of the little snapping discussion we had at the beginning. Let's say I don't want the location of this guy to change whatsoever. With this guy selected, notice I do not have any of the axis handles selected. I can simply come down, hold. Now, in this case right here, I'd want to hold V so that I'm doing point snapping. Put my mouse over my destination location, press the middle mouse button down, and gesture, and all is good. Though be forewarned, you do have 2 vertices right here. Okay, you can tell this, for those of you wondering, by looking up here in your title bar, and it says polysurface1.vtx16 ... That ... is indicating to me that we have got more things selected, more components selected.
Okay.
So now if I wanted to, I could go ahead and come back up here and then come back down and do another merge. And then if we select, I guess we need to give it a little bit of a distance as opposed to 0, so 0.001, because they should be dead on top of each other. And let's see, still, all right, 0.1. Do we have 2, or is it just... Okay, all right. What we had going on there, which is another thing to point out from time to time, sometimes it's a good idea to deselect and reselect,
right?
Because it just was not updating, it just wasn't refreshing properly.
Exactly.
So now, I can come over here, a single click, so I'm not marqueing, and you can see it's just one object there. If I move it, the whole thing does indeed stay together.
By the way, that is a good way to test to see if your merged vertices have worked. Just click on your new vertex and try to drag it. If you get a new hole, that means they did not merge. If they move together, everything's great.
And the key thing that Zach said was click, not marquee select, because marquee key select, of course, is going to grab everything inside
Exactly.
it. And you don't want that to happen. Okay, so that brings us up to, let's just go ahead and let's just do this. Go over into object mode real quickly, select this guy, delete it out. Now what I want to do is show you guys something else that I find to be really cool, and that is if we come back up here to polygons, I can create a polygon from scratch, which is awesome. So create polygon tool, and I'll use some grid snapping here. I'll come in here, I'll hit X, so I'll snap to a point. Maybe I want to go down a little bit, and then I want to go out a little bit, and then I want to go this way, and then perhaps let's go back to line up with that, and then maybe down here, and I'm doing something crazy over to here, and I like this shape. Hit enter. Once I've got the shape, I mean, everything's cool. I can right-click, go into faces, select this polygon face right there, and then again, come back up here to edit polygons, come down, and we're going to extrude the face out. Be very careful here in regards to which way Z is pointing so that you can drag this guy out, or whichever axis Z is, for the simple fact that you want to go in the direction of the arrow. If you go in the other way, what we have just done is inverted our surface. Our normals are now pointing inward. And for those that are ever curious about how you can go about seeing your normals with your object selected like this, you can simply come up to display. You can come down here to polygon components, and you can say show me my normals. And normals, basically a surface is going to have the normal side, which is the true side, and then it's going to have the non-true side, which is
kind of like an outside and an inside.
Exactly. And so this is our outside here. You can see all of our little pieces are indeed pointing the way that they need to be. But if I was to be in a situation where I had pulled in the opposite direction, all of my lines just disappeared, and that's because they're now pointing inward. You can still see little dots indicating that that's where the actual normal indicator starting from, but again, they're pointing on the inside.
Okay.
So make sure that these are pulled out. Of course, there is a way to go in and flip normals and all that good stuff, but that's outside the scope of the lesson.
Okay.
All right, so with that, let's just go ahead and come in here, select our object, and again, we'll just simply come back up here to display, come back down to polygon components, and we'll turn normals off, and then we'll delete this guy out. And that brings us to two final things that I want to talk about in regards to the polygon tools that are available. Then we'll take a look a little bit at some NURBs. First is the ability to combine. We've already looked at it, but again, it's something important to me. I'm going to come over to polygon primitives, cut this guy off, and let's make a cube. Let's move him over. Let's make a sphere. Let's move him over.
Ooh, a sphere this time.
And let's make a cylinder.
Ooh.
All right, so now we have this wonderfully sophisticated primitives that we're going to bring over, if you want to look at it that way. And we'll just put them all close together. Perhaps we want to set that somewhere over inside of Unreal in our map. All right, now, we need to bring one object over into Unreal. So what we need to do is simply go ahead and come up to polygons, but we'll select everything that we want, polygons, and then finally, come on down to combine, and we are indeed left with one object.
So you just took those three objects and basically made them into one polygonal object.
You got it. And then I just deleted out history to get rid of all my input nodes, and all is good. Okay?
Very cool.
And final thing, if we delete this guy out, we've already talked about this in the workflow section, but I will go ahead and come up here, create another cube real fast, and that is, don't forget, before you take your objects out and over back into Unreal Ed, that you come up here to polygons and that you simply come down and you triangulate it. There's no options there. Just the triangulation becomes a very important thing, as you see there. Okay? Because we don't work with quad polygons over instead of Unreal. We deal with triangles.
Right.
All right, so with that out of the way now, Zach, let's get into some really interesting stuff. Let's take just a second and introduce them to some NURBS curves, some lofting, some revolving, and how we can convert a NURBS object over into a polygon.
Let's do it.
All right, so this is going to give us some more capabilities. Maya's NURBS world is fantastic. It's very stable. It's very powerful. There's a lot of options available. There's a lot of rules to know about because you start dealing with seams. Of course, you're doing what's called patch modeling, and that gets a little bit involved, and we're not going to get into that. I just want to show you enough tools to get you up and running. Now, NURB stands for non-uniform rational B-splines, and they are mathematically calculated curves and mathematically calculated surfaces. Basically, we use curves to generate surfaces. We, of course, can come up here to create, come down to NURBS primitives, and create a primitive quickly like that. As you see, I'm looking at a sphere, which doesn't really look like a sphere until I hit 4 and go into a wireframe. Again, that's because we're dealing with different resolutions on my keyboard. If I hit 1, I'm looking at a rough resolution. 2 is a medium resolution, and 3 is a fine resolution. Just keep that in mind. Those of you out there that may have slower computers, this can be extremely helpful.
Definitely.
All right, so let's go ahead and delete that. Let's see how we can make our own surfaces. I'm going to go ahead and come up here to create, come down and create a CV curve tool. Curve tools have different degrees. We've got a 1 degree linear, 2 degree, a 3 cubic, which is default, a 5, and a 7. 5 and 7 you're not going to use unless you're working with precision models for a car manufacturing company or something like that. 3 works fantastic for organic things. 2 starts to become a little less accurate, and 1 is linear, straight CV to CV to CV for your spans. And of course, I got to be careful with what I'm saying here because this gets us into a big theory lecture that I don't want to hit at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to leave it on 3 cubic. I'll go ahead and close this out. And what this is we can now come in and we can start creating curves. Now, with the curves and creation here, what I'm going to do is come over here and click, and I have just placed the CV down, but this CV does not generate a curve. Of course, if I hit enter, I do have the curve node. I just do not have a resulting curve that I can see.
Of course, I'm not sure if you already said this, but CV stands for control vertex.
Very good. Now, if I click again, I have got another CV. You'll notice that the first 2 CVs I got have got both different shapes, if you will. The first one is an open square. The open square always indicates the start of a NURBS curve. The second CV is a U. This indicates my U direction. When we start dealing with NURBS, we're dealing with a UV direction. All right, so now if I click one more time, now we get just our regular dot. I still do not have a curve at this point. Why? We've got a 3 degree cubic curve. I'm going to keep this in very basic language here as opposed to get into the theory beneath it. But what's required is 4 CVs to get our first span, and we have to have at least one span to see a curve. So we've got CV0, CV1, CV2, CV3, and there comes our curve.
There you go.
All right, so now we've got a curve, and the different pieces that we're dealing with, let's go ahead and make one more. Now you'll notice with each CV that I add, we generate a new span, and with a new span, we of course get an extension to the curve. So we have a total of 3 spans here. Let's take a look real quick at some of a little bit of the components and the build-up, or what's the anatomy, there we go, of what I'm looking for here. If I go ahead and switch back over into a component mode, all right, let's turn that off. Let's go ahead and come back over here and turn points on, and there's our CVs. The open-ended square, the U to indicate the direction where the U is running, then CV, 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 and CV. With the exception of the beginning and the end, you'll find that the CVs never lie on the curve unless you're using a 1 degree linear, because as I said a second ago, it's point to point at that point. Now we have another type of point that we're dealing with when we're dealing with NURBS, and that is the edit point. It's also known as knots as well. And basically between the section of curve that exists between 2 edit points or 2 knots is what is called a span. To see our knots, I'm simply going to come over here and click on this guy. If I right click, you can see there's NURBS edit points. So with him turned on, now if I look, there's a little X down there. So there's an X, there's an X, there's an X, there's an X. So let's go ahead and highlight all these so it's easier to see. Again, the distance between it is a span. So we've got 1 span, 2 span, and 3 span. And that's exactly what we should have because I dragged out the CVs, and after dragging them out and getting my first span, I then added another CV to have another span, and then another CV finally for the last span, which does indeed bring us to 3 spans. All right, so that is important. Another thing that you may find useful when working with curves is the ability to go in there and select a hole. And this isn't so powerful when you're working with curves as it is to when you're working with surfaces, because when you're dealing with surfaces and you simply click on a hole, what it will do is it will select all of the CVs that connect together in whether the U direction or the V direction, depending on the hole that you selected.
Okay.
All right, so now we've got these guys all selected just as an example. So that's a quick build-up of it. I want to show you one last thing. Now, if I come back into object mode, hit Control-A to open up my attribute editor. From inside here, look at this, spans. We've got 3 spans. All right, so now that we know how to make curves, we'll find that up underneath Create, we have the ability to create 2 types of curves, a CV curve tool and EP curve tool. And let me correct myself, not 2 types of curves, it's just 2 types of tools that create the same thing in the end.
2 methods of creating curves.
Exactly. Basically, it's like if you had a real fancy coffee pot and then you had the old campfire style coffee pot. You have 2 tools, but in the end, you still create coffee.
You still get coffee.
Okay. The CV curve tool, what that'll do is you'll be placing CVs in there, but it's a while till you see your first span. The EP curve tool allows you to place EP points or edit points in there. And of course, the second edit point I place, I automatically see the curve because I now have a span in place. A span exists between 2 edit points. I drag out another one. There you go. So now I've got 2 spans. Of course, this means I've got multiple CVs. Okay, it automatically takes care of that for you. and then we can just continue adding spans as we want. The nice thing about working with the EP curve tool is that the curve always flows through the edit points, where with CV it's not like that. Though sometimes it may be kind of hard to get a predicting result, where with CVs it could perhaps be a little bit easier. It just all depends. And as for which case is better, well, we need to get into some really advanced modeling techniques to really be able to demonstrate it, and that's not going to happen right here. Sorry, guys. And so right now, just play with the two and find the one that works best for you for whatever it is that you're creating.
Absolutely.
All right, so now, how can we build some stuff with this? I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter to finish the curve, which is required when you're using the tool. I'll go ahead and delete these guys out. Let's hit Spacebar. Let's come over here to a side view, and let's introduce everybody to the revolve. So again, I'll come up here. I'm going to do Create. Come down, do a CV curve tool. I'm going to grid snap right here at the center and grid snap out here, maybe out here again, and then we'll start bringing this guy up a little bit. And don't ask me what I'm making. It's some sort of organic reactor or something. I don't know.
Oh, sure.
But what I'm doing, okay, fine. It's a flower pot. You asked for it. All right, so now I'm just going to bring these guys up. Let's go ahead and snap, snap, something like that. Cactus. No, don't know. All right, so now what I've done, though, is I've quickly created a profile curve. And with this profile curve, you'll notice that, by the way, I used my y-axis line right here as the center point because by default, that's what we're going to be revolving around. With the curve selected, now I can simply come up here to surfaces, and from surfaces, I can come down to my first option, which is revolve. You'll see that I have now generated a surface from this, and if I hit spacebar and come up here and look at my perspective view, now I've just created this little fusion reactor thingy-majig. Of course,
flower reactor cactus thing.
Exactly. Now we're looking at it in a rough view, but I could, if I wanted to, come in here and hit 3, and now we're looking at it detailed.
Oh, very nice.
Now, of course, what is nice is the ability, if we wanted to come in here and grab the original curve. I can, of course, turn surfaces off, grab my curve, and then start manipulating the CV's pieces themselves. And this is where you can really start getting into all the techniques involved. If I wanted to, I can come over here and create a layer. I can grab my surface. Let's turn surfaces back on. Grab my surface, take it into the layer, so I'll add selected object, and then I can reference it, and what that'll do is prevent me from selecting it even with surfaces on. Then I can perhaps grab my curve over here, switch over into a component mode. Now let's just turn everything off but our points, our CVs on here. And then I can come in and grab CVs, and you can see that as I start shaping that I'm now controlling what my model is going to look like.
And just as a note, that's dependent upon construction history. So if you've deleted the history off this object, this will not happen.
You got it. And as you can see, I'm now making some type of fantastic, scary-looking object.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've made this guy, okay, some sort of object, who knows. All right, so there we go. Ta-da! Now, using revolve, very, very powerful. There's a lot of settings that you can use with it. There's also a manipulator that you can use with it as well. We're not going to get into those right now. The idea is just make sure you base it off of your center Y, a dark grid axis line, do your profile curve, and revolve it. Later, if you start digging into all the settings and the manipulators, you'll find that you can do some really fancy things, and you're not limited to just building it in that location. But this is enough just to get you started with creating NURB surfaces this way. Next thing I want to introduce you to is, let's go ahead and delete all this out, and go ahead and, actually, you know what? I'm just going to do a new scene. Just get rid of all my layers and everything real quick. Next thing I want to introduce you to is going in and working with a loft. Loft is a basic way of just extruding, if you will, a surface between NURBS curve to NURBS curve to NURBS curve.
Okay.
So I'm not going to, I'll just come in here. Here's a quick way to do it. Create a circle like such, kind of like do the old engine type thing. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to move this guy out. So what I'm doing is I'm building a framework. Scale it up a little bit, duplicate it, move it on out a little bit more, perhaps right there. Duplicate it again and move it forward a little bit and scale it down like such. Duplicate it again, move it back.
And for those of you who might have missed it, he's duplicating with Control D.
That's correct. And let's grab this guy over here and perhaps Control D. And this is not going to end up looking too good, but it'll work really well for showing construction history. And we'll move this guy on the inside right there. Now, I've made a bunch of curves in here. And the bottom idea behind a loft is you select any two curves and you come up to surfaces, or any two or more curves, and select loft. And then as you see here, if I hit 3 and then 5, I have now created a surface from that, right?
Okay.
Let's delete that out. Now, as I said a second ago, 2 or more. So I have the ability of selecting multiple curves, but I have to select them in the order that I want this new surface to be pulled along. So I'll start from the inside, and then shift select out, 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 inside, inside. So now I've selected my order properly. come up here to surfaces, and again back down to loft, hit 3 to up my resolution, and I have created this guy right here.
Oh, wow.
And now, as you already know, if I want to, I can come up here and turn surfaces off, so I cannot select my surface. And then I can just come in here and simply grab my curves, and you can see that I can start really controlling the look of this through construction history.
Very nice.
Okay. So if I wanted, let's say, the front to have a little bit of a different feel there, maybe bring this in a little bit, perhaps back a little bit, so I'm not limited to the control of the location of it. And there you go. Okay. Who knows what? Part of an engine or something. There we go. Now something strange. All right. More futuristic engine.
Right.
Very, very useful. Again, and we're not limited to just using things like NURB surface or circles if we wanted to. Of course, if I wanted to, I could have come over here and say create. Let's come down here and do an edit curve just to make this quick. And I could do that guy, and then let's come down here again. And again, I can just come in here, hit G to repeat my last. There we go. And then with the two guys selected, then I come up here to surfaces, loft, hit 3 to up the resolution, and then, of course, just come down here and start modifying. If I wanted to rotate it even, let's do a modify center pivot to move the center pivot over there. I mean, no matter what we do at this point, you can see that
very cool.
We're going to be basically controlling what's going to happen to that loft because we're going back in time and we're altering history.
Right.
Okay? All right, so all handy stuff, but in the end, you need to know how to take this and convert it to polygons because that's what's required over inside of Unreal. And very easy to do it. All we'll do is come in here, turn surfaces back on. I'll grab this guy right here. Let's say that's the object we're interested in. I can delete construction history real quick by A, selecting this and deleting construction history, or B, I can turn surfaces off, come in here and select all of my curves. I'll grab all these guys. And hitting delete, turn surfaces back on. Now there is no construction history involved here. Now, let's say I want to take this guy right here and convert him over into a polygon object. It's just simply a matter of coming up here to modify and then coming down to convert. And then from convert, you'll find a NURBS to polygons. We'll go ahead and open up our options box. And from inside here, you'll find 4 different methods that you can use for generating your polygons as in regards to tessellation. In other words, how your edges and all are going to be divided up.
Right.
And those are standard fit, which is default. We've got general, and these two I'm not going to get into because they get into you having to understand a lot of theory behind NURBS to make these work, though you can get some really good results out of them. But for beginners, you'll find that count and control points work really well. Let's start with control points. Control points is very simple. Every place we've got a CV, we're going to have
a vertex.
You got it. So I'll go in here, come in here and hit apply. But when I do, it's going to be a little bit larger than this because remember the CVs don't actually lie on the surface or the curve.
Right.
So when I hit apply, now we get something that looks a little bit larger. And, you know, we start to kind of get away from the shape as well. So that, you know, maybe not too good. So let's delete this guy out, come back and reselect this. The other way I want to show you is through count. In count, we can come in here and we can specify how many vertices. And the more vertices we give it, the more to the point or more to the accurate surface we represent.
Okay.
So, of course, if I came in here and said, please recreate this with only 50 vertices, well, then we're going to get something that's going to start looking really rough, like that. But if I come in here and say, you're allowed to use 250 and hit apply, now we're going to start getting a little bit closer, as you can see there. Of course, you can see that I've already got this guy being triangulated. If you want to work with quads, because let's say you're planning to then go back and use some of the other tools I showed you and working with quads is best, simple, just come over here and check quads. So let's take this, let's update this to perhaps 400, and then hit apply, and look at this. Okay, now we're starting to get very dead on. Of course, that's perhaps still a little bit too much in my opinion, so maybe 300 right here, and then hit apply. And there we go, representing pretty well. It's 100 vertices less, so looking pretty good. All right, so this is how we can simply convert a NURB surface over to a polygon. Now, through this lesson, I've demonstrated quite a few different tools, a few techniques. I've demonstrated both working with polygons and working with NURBS. So I believe at this point you guys should be loaded with enough information that you can now install that Maya PLE that comes with Unreal Tournament 2003. Take a look at the lesson, go through it, get a basic understanding, and then start practicing. Now, couple what you learned in this lesson over with the workflow lesson, and you guys will be in fantastic shape for getting your models back out over into Unreal Tournament 2003.
Absolutely.
Now, one last thing is we also have a MEL lesson. Watch that MEL lesson because you can make the exporting process just a little bit easier. So with that, Zach, I'd like to thank you for joining me with this lesson.
Thank you, Buzz.
And that wraps it up. So thanks, everyone.